This is Dan Destructo from the band No Fraud, and I'm going to tell you about an incident that occurred long ago. Usually, I probably would think I tell funny stories. This probably wouldn't be classified as a funny story. So, here we go. It was about 1986, I think it was. And No Fraud was booked to play a show at the Cuban Club with a band called the Dead Milkmen. And we were kind of like up and coming.
Thrash bong! We have a sense of humor. A lot of thrash bands actually have a sense of humor.
More so than maybe a lot of bands. But our music and Dead Milkmen wasn't exactly a perfect match, but they're a good band. What they do, they're great, actually a great band at what they do. And they're good guys. No Fraud shows up, and we decide to hang out in the parking lot like most bands. And at that time, across the street from the Cuban Club was a dirt or marl or whatever you want to call it, a dirt parking lot where we would all party and hang out. We're hanging out, drinking beers, getting ready to load our gear in and play, and Howard and I decide to skate up to the store, which is several blocks away and wasn't the best of neighborhoods at that time. It was pretty sketchy, actually. I have to borrow a skateboard. Why? I don't know. I probably broke mine. So I asked Jason, our bass player, if I could borrow his skateboard. And as he handed it to me, he said, "Don't get this stolen." I took that to heart. Howard and I skate up to the store. I don't think I was drinking right then, if at that time, but usually I did drink. Maybe just gotten some sodas or fountain drinks or whatever. And we were skating in the parking lot on some curbs, having a good time. And two kids walk up and start chatting with us. And I'm just going to tell you, actually, it's not lack. You need to know that these were two black kids. I'm an off-white kid, mostly white, but I'm, when you look at me, you quickly realize I'm not all white. And Howard is a black kid. So we're just chatting about skateboards, kids interested in the skateboard, and asked if he can ride it. I'm trying to be cool and nice and turn somebody on the skateboarding, so I let this kid push around in the parking lot. And this is also a gas station. So there's cars coming in and out. There's a little bit of traffic. This is where a lot of people that come to the shows at the Cuban Club at that time would stop to buy beer, snacks, whatever. Howard and I are looking at this kid, and he's heading out towards the street. And I'm like, oh shit, this kid's going to steal the skateboard. And sure enough, he kicks it into the road and starts chasing it. So I chase him. He picks it up. He's across the street, and he's running between these buildings. And I chase him, and I catch him. But we're pretty far in at that point. And him and I are tugging on the skateboard. He has one end of it. I have the other end. And we're like under a street light in a kind of like a parking lot, I guess. And we're doing this tug of war over the skateboard. I'm trying to explain to him it's not mine. I promised not to get it stolen. And I was also saying, like, man, you're being a dick. I let you ride the skateboard and you steal it.
The following are things a naive person thinks during a crisis situation. I mean, in my mind, I'm trying to figure out.
This guy really likes to hear himself talk, huh? It's hard to believe he's about to find the fatal flaw that many logical or hyper-intelligent people have. Even though they are right most of the time, their reality is not omnipresent. That reality is both a shared experience and an individual experience. So
I'm trying to figure
onward.
out, why is this happening to me?
I'm trying to sort all this out. And in a split second, the kid lets go of the skateboard. I see a shadow, because I guess we're kind of under a street light. And I flinch, turn my head a little bit, and pow. Next thing I know, I'm on the ground. There's somebody tugging on something and it's pulling my arms up, and I realize that I still am holding on to the skateboard, and one of the kids is pulling on the skateboard trying to get it from me, and the other kid is poking me with a stick, which is really a 2x4, but it's like shattered in the long way. And they're both talking, and they're kind of like startled that I'm fighting back because I realize I'm on the ground. And so, yes, I get it. They think, how is this guy still holding on to the skateboard? I quickly ascertain that there's another half of a board laying on the ground next to me, and that, oh yeah, I guess I got a 2x4 broken over my head. I have these like biker rings on, for lack of a better term, just big shiny pewter silver metal things. And they have spikes on them. They're basically skulls or whatever. I pull down on the skateboard and swing up with my right arm and knock the one kid off his feet onto the ground. Pretty much knock him out. The other kid is shocked, and I stand up with the skateboard, use the skateboard to help me stand up, and realize that this kid is screaming. I can't really hear because my ears are ringing, and completely disoriented. And I'm looking, and I notice there's lights popping on all over these buildings that are around me, and there's people coming out, but everybody's black. And I realize that this is probably going to be bad. So I try to like talk to the first people that are showing up and explain that this is my friend's skateboard, and he had told me not to get it stolen. These guys tried to steal it. We were just over at the stop and go shop, gas station, and next thing I know, all hell breaks loose. And it's just like a mini riot as more and more people are showing up. And it maybe for 2 seconds was a pushing match, and the next thing I know, it was probably less than that. Somebody probably came in and just tried to haymaker me from the back of the crowd. It's a full-on riot. There's fists flying. And some people were trying to help me because I think they probably saw what had occurred. And other people were just trying to hit me. So then some of the people that were trying to help me were getting hit, so they were fighting back. So it was just this, like a cartoon. Fists, dust, people punching, people screaming. At some point, I go onto the ground and just realize I have to get out of there. There's nothing good is going to come of me trying to explain what happened. So I'm crawling on my hands and knees to get out from under the crowd because it was that chaotic. It was men, women, children, stuff flying through the air, drinks going in the air because people were showing up because it was like Friday night or whatever with their booze or beer in hand, and cans and cups are flying, and I'm crawling in the direction of least resistance. And I finally, as quick as it started, it's over. But there's all these people, and everybody's screaming at me, at other people, and I get up, and I could see a light in front of me that is not in the complex. It's an actual true street light out on the street, and I have to walk across a little bit of the parking lot onto some grass, go between two buildings, and I figured that I'll be out in the street. So I move out there. Well, I don't move out there. I walk towards the light, and I get up. I have to step up on the curb, and that's when I realized, like, well, that was hard, just stepping up on the curb. And now I can hear a little better, and I can hear people like saying racial shit at me and just calling me names, and some of the people calling each other names. And I turn around and I try to say, like, I could smell barbecues going, and I try to say something about how fucked up that all was and that it was my friend's skateboard. And I say some shit about like barbecues that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. And I fall down on the ground. And I'm like, that was fucked up. That was stupid. I shouldn't have said anything. I should have just kept walking. So now I roll over and I see people walking at me. And I'm not sure if it's to help me or hurt me. A couple guys are screaming at me, so I'm guessing it's probably to hurt me. So I get up and I make it out to the street while these couple guys are following me. They're getting closer and closer. And I'm trying to catch my breath. I realize I'm having trouble catching my breath. I get out. I'm under the street light. And now I can see that I'm like half a block, if that, from where it all started at the Stop and Shop or whatever it's called, in the gas station. I could see that I could probably make it there. I'm like, I can make it there. But I look over towards the Cuban Club and realize it's pretty far away. There's like a big empty lot where they had knocked down a building and it's dark. And I'm like, I'm not going to make it there. It's like, to real safety, I'm probably not going to make it because these cats are going to frickin' chase me down and finish me off or whatever. So as I'm contemplating this, I have my hands on my knees. I'm bent over, trying to catch my breath. And I have these brand new white high tops on for my, rock and roll show. And I realize there's something on them. So I try to wipe it off. And as I'm reaching down to wipe it off, these like specks or whatever, there's more of them and they're multiplying. And then I look at my hand and it has them on them too. And then there's like a stream of it coming down. And that's when I realized, like, oh, I'm bleeding profusely from my head through my hair. It's like coming out of my hair. So right then and there, I decide, all right, I just have to go to the Stop and Shop and take my chances there. So I walk in full sight of some of these people, that I'm just going to the store where it all started. So as I go over there, I see Howard running from the side of the building towards me, side of the Stop and Shop. And he catches me as I like start getting into that parking lot and is like, holy shit, man, that was fucking crazy. I was running over to try to help. And it was like a small riot blew up right on top of you. I realized there was nothing I could do. I'm going to go call the cops. So he went back to the store and called the cops, which I'm not a big cops fan. But at that point in time, I was like, holy shit, that might have been a good idea. Might have been a bad idea. I'm not sure yet. We'll see how this plays out. So I go with him. He helps me because I'm, still a little wobbly. We get up to the store and we walk in and we tell the lady, like, oh my God, I was just attacked. And one lady that works at the store looks at me and is like, oh my God, honey, come here. Let's try to get you, help you out. And the other lady in the store is like, get the fuck out of here, motherfucker. You're bleeding all over the store floor. So the one lady, they start arguing. Howard's pleading with them. And the one lady goes and gets a beer flat, which is just like a piece of cardboard folded into like, half a box, and lets me bleed into that. Suddenly there's a few kids running by from the buildings where all this went down. They're screaming shit at me through the window because I'm sitting there and now the blood is flowing. And I'm sitting there. Howard's saying, like, man, I don't think we should go out there. Maybe we can wait for someone to pull up and take us back to the van and over to the club. I'm like, yeah, let's just wait here. Somebody will surely pull up. Well, the cops pull up, an ambulance pulls up. The cops come in, ask what happened. I give them the quick lowdown. They ask Howard for the story too. They get me in the ambulance, and there's a couple paramedics in there. They start looking at me. And meanwhile, kids are running up behind the open door at the back of the ambulance and are talking shit and telling me, like, we're going to get you. We messed you up. Just normal crap. But part of me wanted to go out and beat some of these kids. I mean, yeah, they were between 12 and 15, but I wasn't that much older than them. My natural instinct was to fight.
Wait a minute, rewind. Did our anarcho-peace punk storyteller just advocate for violence? Well, when you're raised that violence is a conflict resolution mechanism, that instinct can be very strong. He's also run into the age-old conundrum of fight or flight, which is hardwired into your DNA. When you get down to it and you really start breaking it apart, what are you supposed to do? Someone's going to smash your skull in. Are you going to stop them because you want to survive and you think that not being racist and not being violent is the way to be for society to progress in a healthy manner? Or are you going to sit there and let them smash your skull in and allow them to propagate racism, greed, violence across society?
The paramedics are looking me over, and the lady's like, wow, you really need stitches in your head. Doesn't look like a fracture that I can tell, but you definitely need stitches. And so the other paramedics looking me over, because I have like scuffs on me from all over me and scratches or whatever. And he's like, oh, damn. And I'm like, that's not good. And the lady who's working on me looks down at him and says, what? And he's like, you got to see this. And so they're both looking at the right outside of my knee. And the guy's like, man, you have to go to the hospital. You need a freaking skin graft. And I'm like, what? He's like, you have a huge hole in your knee. So I look down there, and I guess when I was crawling on my hands and knees in the parking lot, somebody had been standing on the back of my right leg, and it ground a hole through the part of your bone on the outside of your knee that touches the ground when you're on your knees. So they'd either intentionally or unintentionally been trying to hold me in place, or I don't know. And it ground a hole through all the way to the bone on my knee. So I'm like, God damn it. It wasn't even bleeding that much compared to my head. I'm like, no, man, I have to go play this show right over there at the Cuban Club. I'll go to the hospital afterwards. They're like, no way, no way. So we argue. The lady cuts some hair out right next to the one on my head, and then uses my hair and ties it in knots to hold that together. And the guy does my knee up. He's like, he's like, they wrap a bandage around it too, tape it off. He's like, this might stay on you. I don't know. So I have to sign a release form. I have to tell the cops I'm not pressing charges. This older guy that hung out in front of the store that we played there fairly often. So I had a small rapport with this dude. I'd talk to him every once in a while. If I was buying beer, I'd give him a beer. And so he's like, Dan, I think we know who did it. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. But those fuckers are going to get it tonight. I'm like, what? Like, what's this? I mean, nice that he was trying to be cool with me and tell me that he was, sad that it happened, whatever. But so while this is all going down, some people finally did pull up. Howard tells them they need to give us a ride. They give us a ride back over there. I hand Jason his skateboard with blood all over it. And we go, and my shirt's totally trashed. I think Damage, a band that was playing as well, I think they played. I could be wrong. They gave me a shirt because mine was just done. And basically, I looked like I had been attacked by a mob. So Tony and Dave from No Clubs had asked around and got me a shirt that wasn't soaked in blood as to not entice the guys we're about to talk about. There was a big skinhead population in Tampa and Florida in general at that time. And they had heard about what had happened. Well, No Fraud and the skinhead population didn't get along because we weren't racist. And we'd had this running little battle between us for quite a while that often culminated in violence because we just didn't accept that we were going to get beat on. Skinheads often picked... Look at it this way. One of the reasons there was a large skinhead population and, pro-violence on their part in the punk community is because most punks are pacifists. So it's easy to make people do what you want that don't adhere to violence by beating them up. But we didn't believe in that, and we fought back, and a lot of it was Venice people. Some people in Tampa did for sure, but the Venice crew was a little bit different, and we fought back. The skinhead population was pretty upset and was trying to talk me into, when I got on stage, to talk about a race riot, and we were going to go over and attack the projects. This is their words, not mine, and set things right, which I immediately said, no fucking way. That's not going to happen. That's not what No Fraud's about. We get in, we play the show. Sure as shit, they're chanting a bunch of Nazi shit while we're playing, yelling race riot. Hey kids, did I hear someone say Nazi shit and race riot? Oh man, the sweet memories of many a show gone wrong in the 80s due to some racial epithets and the great old heartwarming Zig Heil. Zig Heil. But wait! If you act now, you can reclaim your American history. On October 12th, 1892, the Bellamy Salute, also known as the Roman Salute, was demonstrated as a gesture to accompany the Pledge of Allegiance in the good old USA. Yeah, for those of you who are too lazy to look that shit up, huh? The Bellamy Salute, it looks just like that there Nazi thing. It looks just like a Sig Heil, see? So, wise up. And try to convince people to go over and attack people over at the projects. I'm doing my best to keep the peace. I'm telling people over the microphone that there's no reason to be violent. I can see, this is an outdoor venue, and I'm from on stage, I can see over to where it happened. I can see the lights of the gas station. And since the Nazis are chanting shit, I'm louder over the microphone telling the neighborhood, like, hey, we don't want anything to do with this violence. We understand it was probably just a misunderstanding and that we were just here to have some fun and then leave. And as we start getting into our set, I can remember having some flashes in my mind of, I wonder if these racist skinhead dudes fucked with those kids as they walked by or something, which had been known to happen outside the club. And then those kids or their friends who heard about it saw me rolling up from the club and decided to set things straight, quote. I don't really remember what happened through most of the show. I just remember kind of showing up in the hospital. I guess I made most of the show. I think I fell down at some point. I fall down all the time while I'm playing. I fell down. I passed out, maybe be a better term. I don't know what the fuck. I don't know what happened. I think I made it through the show. All I remember is we drove out to the hospital and they admitted me, and then we're like, oh, you need a skin graft, and holy shit, we're gonna x-ray your head, and they did all this stuff, and my friends were raising hell throughout the hospital, hitting on nurses, wheelchair races, the normal shit. Once they figured out I didn't have insurance, they kicked me out, and then we drove home, and the boys got to do some train riding and stuff at the end where the railroad crossings were. I thought that was it. But in the months that followed, I realized something was going on in my head, let alone my knee, that wouldn't really heal. It's like I was skateboarding in a parking garage in Sarasota because that was about the most hill you could find. And somebody stepped out from between some cars. I hadn't seen them. And I remember I had a full moment of like, I guess it was fear, but it was more like shock, and this primal survival mode kicked in. And it kind of like my heart was racing and I felt all weird. And just little things like that where I noticed that I no longer felt like I was indestructible or was going to live forever or just weird vibes, weird feelings that I wasn't used to. So years later, I realized that I probably had PTSD from it. The party just never ends, huh? So what are some of the things I learned from this night of bloody glory? Well, that even though my music and laughter helped keep the sadness of the machinations of an illogical society at bay, said society could find me and cut me to the bone in an instant at almost any time. I found that letting yourself stay beat down and caving into the darkness of things like ignorance and identity fulfillment and ever-present tribalism would have been letting them win. Yes, I said them, them in this case being the racist skinheads and the other racist people with more melanin in their skin than the racist skinheads. I had seen myself as some kind of bridge between racial and socioeconomic divides, but in reflection, I found that I was more like a catalyst that fanned the flames of hate and violence between those two groups of people. And the worst part about it for me was that I, the person preaching like unity and peace and integration, ended up being attacked by both sides physically, more than they probably ever physically had attacked each other. So, good times. All right, well, that's a bit of a downer. We don't want to end on that. Yeah. So I also learned that some people are always going to believe in racism, and there's possibly nothing you can do about that at that moment in time, or maybe even ever, and you have to accept that. But you also may be influencing people in a positive direction by your actions, part of which would be not believing in racism. So you just go on, you keep going. Well, another thing I learned was that I was a little naive of the fact that in my mind, everything was like critical thought process. And I had skated into a situation where people were just reacting, and they were reacting to what they probably thought I was. The fact that I was being a little naive to the fact that they were just going to take the skateboard, even though I thought I was being cool. What was an evil deed to me was probably a method or an axiom of progress to the people that tried to take skateboard. So besides some mild PTSD, a hole in my leg that wouldn't heal, and a wicked scar on my head, I found that some differences are quite possibly irreconcilable, and that it's okay for people to maybe move to one corner and other people in the other corner, as long as there's still some form of communication going on between them. It maybe is best at times to have a few borders so that people can feel safe and do what they want to do in their area, as long as the two aren't completely interfering with each other. We should heed the warnings and predictions of people like Huxley, Orwell, and Bradbury. They said that luring all of humanity into some pseudo-homogeneous corporate government utopia does not end well. Technologies will be offered as the solution to create civil uniformity, but to get there, the only way to reconcile these differences will be things like gene editing. You edit people to weed out bad and enhance the good in a person. But who gets to decide that? Your freedom is coming. It just depends on what the government or corporations tell you freedom is. Anarchy is freedom.